podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Old Head podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My brother, Justice Raji.
So another occurrence has happened since the start of the new year. Katt Williams went on Club Shay Shay, which is Shannon Sharp's podcast, and it just was a rip roaring affair of how you say mostly truth telling. Probably a high level of truth telling. Some stuff in there was sort of like, I don't know, Katt, that sounds a little fishy, but whatever. It's all
magical
good, bro.
thinking.
Yeah, a little bit. The 4-3-40 stuff, and some of it was like 4-3 word, Katt. Like he ain't that big, so there is a potential that he could be that fast, but also like maybe not necessarily. And then if your life ways did not allow you to have a super stable existence in middle and high school, it's very easy reason why you wouldn't be in sports and you still could be really fast. I'm just trying to figure out who clocked you in the 40 at whatever age to find out that you had a 40.
But who clocked you? Hold on. But it's like, who clocked you and then didn't give you an immediate pathway? Like, because the argument is, like any other, Joel Embiid didn't play basketball until he was 16 or something crazy, right? Like,
Right.
But because at some point, Joel Embiid got on the basketball court and somebody said, whoa, man. All right, we know you play soccer, but we don't care. Like, you're coming over here with us, right?
Yeah,
so at what point did you get clocked? And it was just like, well, you're actually superhuman fast. You're abnormally fast for you.
You ain't done no training, but you are world-class speed here. You're
literally a world-class sprinter. Like, you're literally a world-class sprinter. Like, so you, like you said, mostly truth-telling, hyperbolic truth-telling.
And but suffice it to say, the entire, there's a lot of layers of like what in the world is happening right here with this, from a like media content, our modern thing that we're doing as it pertains to like how do people learn about the world, what feeds people's insights, all sorts of convergences of at least as I would see as kind of the wacky ways that then we respond to these things that happen, and then from there's sort of like, what is the modern sort of business of media, and I guess I keep calling it media, and I think the world says it's content. I think that's the word, and I probably need to just stop trying to fight it. That it is indeed content. It's just a lot, right? And so I wanted, I guess, to and it definitely, I would say, in terms of the way people in our collective like social media spheres and those as this impact point to engage with what other people are thinking about. Everybody watched it. Apparently, it's at like 58 million views or 55 million views on Shannon's YouTube page, Club Shay Shay, which is a lot of views. From my understanding of the video that I saw, that said like that would mean, I think it's like $9 or $10 per 1,000 views or something like that. So that's a lot. But the crazy thing is that it did, I think, 38 million in the first 3 days. Which, that's like more people than watched like the like the World Series Game 6 or something, probably. Like that's no insignificant number of eyes, no matter who those eyes may have been, right? And then there's also, notwithstanding the subject matter of Katt's conversation.
I mean, the way you put that just makes it. The way you put it makes how insane this shit is. Like, I think we got a level set here. Like, that's a lot of people to watch a 3-hour gossip session. Like,
Right.
you know
And it was
like,
it's a whole 3 hours too. It ain't like it took me a while to even watch the whole thing. I was like, man, this is long. Like, even if I'm like do a little video game and then watch the interview, it's like, man, it ain't over yet. Like, gotta go to bed. Like so yeah. So I passed to you. Is there some
yeah.
salient like entry point that you would like to share about this experience?
Oh man, a Chevys, as my mother used to say. Um, so I mean, I think again, you give it some context to the level of the people watching it to discuss these kind of bigger issues. I think part of what we do is try to take out to your point, the salient ideas or the bigger issues. You know, the idea that you could spend 2-3 hours on comedic gossiping is one thing that then ties into like this concept of Hollywood, right? And I think for me, I pull it back out and say a lot of it has to do with this perception of Black Hollywood or Black people in as it connects to Hollywood and the variety of ways that you could frame a career. Not necessarily, not on the same tip, but not necessarily unlike the early Dame Dash, like I put up all my money. I do business like this. You do business like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, Katt Williams juxtaposes the idea of being like an independent and doing, hundreds of shows a year and putting smaller comedians on and kind of functioning as a midpoint, if you will, in the broader comedic world, right? Like you're not Katt Williams. You're not, pardon me. You're not Kevin Hart, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not the person that goes and does these like tours all across the world and has this like large backing and does movies, but at the same time, you're not the guys at the comedy club either, right? And to juxtaposing that economic model as a model that empowers you to keep more of your character intact. Mm-hmm. Versus the other ones that, Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, this person, that person, in your estimation, you've compromised your character by engaging in that level of the game, right? So that's kind of a big picture thing I tried to take out of it, like gossip nonetheless. You know what I mean? Obviously, as an acerbic comedian, he's going to, throw Molotov cocktails at people's wives and that whole premise, and that's what that is. And also the commonly, what's now almost a retreat of this idea that every Black comedic has to wear a dress. Which, I think who was it? Eddie, what was the comedian that first brought that to bear?
Eddie Griffin?
Eddie Griffin. I'll say in early 2000s or late 90s when Eddie Griffin first brought that to bear, I thought, oh man, this is deep, right? Like, now I think it's a thing. I don't know if it's as deep as I thought it was, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's a thing there. And again, and there's also like this idea of the gatekeepers and how people get access, and how do you kind of attack that conversation about how people get access and how they develop themselves once they do that. And so, I thought, like, to your point, there were some quote unquote truths being told. There were some things being revealed that, may have a lot of substance to them. I do also think that it was a bit of airing dirty laundry, as I may say. And I don't mean dirty laundry because I'm standing up for like Black people, but more speaking on things about people who are not allowed to talk about them. you know, alleging all kind of stuff about people, and the idea that people didn't respond. In some words, people go, they didn't respond because it was the truth, and sometimes it's like they didn't respond because it was outlandish,
Right.
right? And and so the lack of a response doesn't mean that he was telling the truth.
Right.
I think people got to get past that.
Yeah. It's and reason why, like I said, even when I started, like kind of the whole place that this happens in, right, is this thing, is this product that we have now, and this experience that we have now. You could look at it from what Gilbert Arenas does on his show around basketball stuff, right? With basketball at the center. I mean, all of these shows, which are kind of like they are now. We've gone from there was the talk in our age, right? In our youth, there was the late night talk show was Johnny Carson, uh, um, what's my man, David Letterman. The middle of the day kind of talk show was your Donahue and Oprah and the ascendance of Oprah, and then the morning type talk show, and then there was like the news type talk show, and then there was the like the entertainment weekly kind of show, and then the edgy show was the inside editions of the world, right? Like these were these.
Hold on, but you forgot about my man. Hold on, you forgot about my man.
I know.
You forgot about my man Morton Downey.
Morton Downey Jr. You know what I'm saying? Morton Downey was a wild show, man.
Yo, remember that show used to come on, man? We was in high school.
Yo,
goddamn Morton Downey, man. Yo.
Morton Downey shut the world off. Like and I always had trouble getting Philly 57 over the air. So like sometimes it would be in, sometimes it would be out.
Oh yeah, you could. But I used to watch it on New York joint. Like, and that's even an idea. You talk about media, the idea that, like, I guess this is 30 years ago, so maybe it feels like another lifetime, but like WGN was Chicago's superstation.
Right.
Then New York at Channel 9. And you could like get these channels
right
on your cable to watch the New York show or the Chicago shows, right? Like, and now we just don't have nothing's localized.
Yeah, like that anymore.
Everything is like across the board, which will be it. But that's where we used to get the Morton Downey was I would argue that Morton Downey was the progenitor of like the Jerry Springers.
Right, like provocative, saying wild stuff, jumping on people. People come on the show and you just berate them like you're a sack of crap. You know what I mean? I don't remember exactly what stuff Morton Downey used to be bad about, but like, and so you have this modern sort of ecosystem of media. And it's something I spend a lot of time thinking about, is like sort of what are the places where people get their information about the world, and not just like, because sometimes you say that and people will say like, well, you mean like the news, like that kind of information. I'm like, no, whatever stuff you're consuming is telling you something about the world. So if you watch like Empty 11, Real Housewives of fill in the blank city, that is informing your idea about all of those places, whether you have agreed to that or not. Like, so if you watch Real Housewives of Atlanta, Real Housewives of Memphis, Real Housewives, there's a whole bunch of them. You know what I'm saying? You are now, in some part of your brain, is informing what you think of filling the name city based on whatever they're doing. You know what I'm saying? And then if you watch, the Bachelors and the Bachelorettes and the Granddaddy Bachelor, like, which I've never watched that show. I wish somebody would try to make me watch that ridiculous show. That's right, I said it. And if anybody take that personal, that's on you. You know what I mean? I ain't talking about you just because I said it's ridiculous. Maybe I am. I don't know. Could be. In any event, the like, so these things are your pathways by which you kind of like form ideas about the world, right? So like all of these, like for us that were old enough to know that Comic View was a show on BET and one of the most successful shows on BET. Again, some of this falls in a window when we was all living together with, like, I know I didn't have cable. So I couldn't afford it. I was living on my own. I had rent and I had heat and lights. I had a record player and a VCR, but I had cable. I had cable for like 4 hot months, and then once a day we forgot to pay the bill or something, and then the cable got cut off, and that was the end of that. We had a good run. We had a good run while it was on. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got cable again when I started working for cable. You know what I'm saying? Like, real talk. And so the like, but all this, so Katt gets on there, right? Like, so in one hand, the goal of the YouTube show is to have these high levels of views in over a lifetime, but also immediately, right? Um, and then you have the other wrinkle, especially around comedy, and a lot of us need to be honest about comedy, because even someone who has participated in the actual art of comedy via like going on open mics and working on my 5-10 minutes and figuring out that as a creative outlet a little bit, kind of got away from it in the last couple of years. But even doing that, most people are not comedy club goers, meaning that like you go to a comedy show, more than, like I'll say, be like, I think I went to see Ali Sadiq last year because I really like Ali Sadiq when he came. And I actually did not go to another comedy show in person the rest of the year. Right. And I like comedy. Right. But it's not something that, I make a regular facet. But comedy clubs, most of these you might have one or two that like have, people coming through. Hopefully you got a couple. But it's a very it's an interesting industry because like you because we have so much more access to what people are doing in comedy via the internet, right? You can get the impression that a lot of y'all go to comedy shows, but a lot of y'all don't go to comedy shows.
Right.
You might see the clips or you might watch the specials when they come on the TV, which was a part of even the importance or the prominence or the growth of the HBO special and then Showtime and HBO. And then now where, like I said, Ali Sadiq, he puts out a couple of his shows like on the YouTube, like and they're just for the internet. The Netflix specials, all these different folks do all of these outlets because for a lot of folks, that's where you will see a comedian in a broader scope because you're not maybe going to your local club to catch, Nate Bargatze or Mike Birbiglia or what's her name? Leslie Wolf. I think I'm messing up her name. You name it. You're not going Wanda Sykes. You're not going to see him. Yeah, it's all these comedians. You're not going to see him. But you know them and you're familiar with them. So Katt gets on the joint and he almost Tupac hit him up style, like just banging on people. Now also, and I want to say this because like I said, I think the Alligator Man episode of Atlanta may be one of the greatest single episodes of a show that anyone's ever done, where you can get the fun, like the comedy, what's funny in the show, what's serious in the show, what's surreal about the show, all in one episode. The conflicts that's happening with them, the weird, like all of the stuff in one little package. And Katt Williams is fantastic in that show. And I can't think of an actor that could play the character that he's playing better than him.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And they would say, he got alligator there. No, he don't. Yes, he do. That's the alligator man. You know what I'm saying? And like, I mean, I'm not gonna do a whole rundown of the show, but it's just a whole like, like it's not like Money Mike transferred to Atlanta. It's the character that he's playing. He's the uncle. He's his odd enough, Lucretia Myra Lucretia Taylor, who plays Lorraine in American Fiction, is Donald Glover's mother's character in that, and it's his sibling, her sibling, who appears to maybe be a wayward soul in some ways, and wild stuff happens, right? So he's this person that has done these roles to me in movies that I think for a lot of people probably outpace his comedy specials. You know what I'm saying? Because like right. I do like I've seen a couple of his specials. I wouldn't say I know he's done like 11. I ain't seen 11 of them. I know that for damn sure, right? And I challenge anybody to prove to me I've watched every single one. Like, all right, bro, good for you. Like, I'm sorry, right? But also, he is a touring comedian, and this is where I was going long-windedly. Successful comedians, a part of it is also building up enough, of a that similar like how we used to talk about like the Roots used to tour like 200, they do 200 spots a year or some shit.
Right.
Yeah, a bit like he does like 100 shows a year, and they got it's a business. You know what I'm saying? Like I go to these cities, he pays people, Um, another before we get into some of the things he said about folks, um, like so there's a piece of how he and you hit on it with like this the way I do my business, Dame Dash style versus what other people do their business. And largely he's built that on the back of like people who like his comedy, right? Like he's not necessarily, I mean, I guess, I don't know how the sponsorships work with comedy shows, but like it's not like he's like, doing sidelines for Coca-Cola at the world at the Super Bowl. And now we got Katt Williams, and like Katt Williams comes out like Coca-Cola, like what I'm saying, like he's not
Right.
in that lane. I mean, it's not necessarily like an aspect of like what back in the day would be like the Chitlin circuit, right? Like you primarily only, but it's definitely like he has a creative pathway that's funded by people that are fans of his work that are probably largely black, but even in that interview he talks about like I was in Sacramento because like white folks liked my comedy when I started doing it, so I went somewhere where I had whether that's totally true or not, but I don't think it's necessarily untrue. Where I found
I
that
think
people like what
to
I
your point. I think to your point is once you get to a certain time, and especially in our society today, like once you get to a certain place, and if you are really known in the black community, that probably is a certain percentage of white people who are adjacent to black stuff,
yeah,
who are engaged,
yeah,
right? Like, so, whatever percentage that is, and may go up or down in certain areas and regions, right? But I think generally one could acknowledge that if something is really well respected in the black community, that means there's probably a couple 100,000 to millions of white people who also engage in that thing just because of culture, right? And because of proximity to culture. So I think that does make sense. I mean, I think he was in Charlotte the other night, and it looked to be a pretty packed house for him to come, to Charlotte. And I don't think it could have been all black, but it looked about 80-20, right? So I think that there's something to be said where just his level of comedianship is now, again, it kind of been that mezzanine, you know what I mean, of success, where it's not, it's not Kevin Hart, but it's also not your everyday uh improv, right? Where you get a couple hundred people in at 20 a wop and they tell jokes, and maybe it's funny, maybe it's not. It's just for you to go out, right? And enjoy enjoy another kind of night out, right? Which is what I've come to understand about kind of like that comedy space. And I do think
yeah, it's definitely like
we
like night out. What you gonna do? Oh, you pay 2 drink minimum or something, watch the show, have a good time. Yeah.
right. And I think as a compliment to that, I think there's also this conversation again, because it's no accident he went on, talked about people for 3 hours, then he's on tour.
Right.
Right. So some of it was promo. Like it wasn't like a truth telling out of season, so to speak. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I have hatchets to bury, right? And I'm settling all, in the words of the Godfather, I'm still settling all family business today. You know what I'm saying? Then let it be done. As I'm settling family business. Hey, I'm going to be in Norfolk.
Right.
You know what I mean? February 6th. You know what I mean? Like, come on out to hear me talk about what I talked about. And again, that's why I did kind of connect it to the Dame Dash model, because I do think there's something to be said from like how he does business and then how he perceives how other people do business. And I think they don't have to be at odds. And I'm kind of focusing on the business model structure of it. They don't have to be at odds, because it's clear that Katt Williams supports a lot of upcoming comedians.
Yeah.
In the like the resulting days, and different comedians saying, yeah, Katt, talk about the motherfuckers, right? So clearly there's a group of people who agree.
Right. That's like, like these other people ain't doing it like you do, Katt. So, we ride with Katt. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. We ride with Katt. So I get that. And then I look at there's the again, I'm gonna use Dame when Dame was Dame. Dame is Dame, but Dame's not Dame anymore, if anyone gets that kind of take on it. Like, he's Dame, but he's not like Dame. So, but that idea of maybe the independent model of the way you do business, right? Or let's take like a Larry June, right? Let's take like another artist, right? Like, or even a West Side Gun, right? Like you take these artists who are, have these independent ecosystems where artists get to tour with them, they get to, they get albums to come out, and none of these albums are going to sell hundreds of thousands of records anymore, right? In our day and time, like,
yeah, this
is not what happens anymore. But they can then get their own audiences. They can tour. They can do a whole bunch of music, flood the system, so they can always get listens and go from there. Versus what a Jay-Z does, right? Like, there's just a different kind of system, that people are functioning on, and I'm not giving value. I think both of them are realistic systems, but it's often like we want to champion one over the other, where, if you want to go see a show at a huge stadium, it's probably with some other kind of economic and social backing, right? Like you don't get to your big shows if some other money is not behind it, right? And so I think there's a lot to be said for both systems. One thing I want to touch on and get your take on is this idea of we need a hero, right? So for everyone who's, age of a certain time, probably 30, 40 and down, you may not remember this, The Greatest American Hero. Mm-hmm. And The Greatest American Hero was a show you come on and you had a hero that would fly, and, the tongue-in-cheek thing was that he was the greatest American hero, but he wasn't that good of a hero. Like
right. he fell, superpowers, but he wasn't really good at using them.
Yeah, he wasn't really good at using them. Like, it was kind of a show about like this idea, you're the greatest bigger hero, but you always mess up and fall and all kind of stuff happens, right? And, in a variety of manifestations, specifically in the Black community, you have this idea of always needing a hero. Even if that person never told you they were your hero, right? Like Michael Jordan's a great example, right? Like you want a hero, but he never wanted to be your hero. He wanted to be left alone and gamble and sell sneakers, right? Like
and torment little known basketball players and international
torment people who have slighted him in
any kind of way.
Yeah, like and so you need a hero. Then a rapper comes out, you need a hero. There's a person comes, you need a hero. And it was so interesting to watch people turn Katt Williams to like this national Black treasure, like protect him at all costs, right? Those kind of statements.
Oh, yeah,
and I was thinking to myself, protect that nigga from who? Right. Who are you protecting him from? Like the man with Men in Black? Like who is going to come out and get rid of Katt Williams for telling the truth about Kevin Hart? Like,
right?
What?
The government?
Yeah, like. Yeah, like, you think with all this going on in the world, the United States government got the time to worry about Katt Williams and Steve Harvey having a beef?
Right. Katt is over there banging on what's my man? And I like he played Ricky Smiley. Like Ricky Smiley is a well regarded across the places where he's on the radio in America. I don't think that I don't think the powers that be is like, yo, we got to do something before
we got to shut down before he shuts Ricky Smiley all the way down.
Right? Like what are we doing here? You know what I'm saying?
But you always need a hero, and I guess I was wanting to get your take on this. Why, in some sense, going back to your point, this was so embraced. Right? Like you just got millions of people watching a gossip session and then talking about protect this guy and how he's like keeping it real, banging on the system. And then weeks later, as we look, like no one remembers it.
Yeah, it's like we moved on. I mean, it's still an interesting conversation. I mean, I'll say this. I mean, I think one, the challenges and related to another topic that would never be a private stock conversation involving some brothers in the creative sphere that would be close to us in a sense. A lot of folks is looking for salvation, not understanding. You know what I'm saying? Like they're looking for something to happen in the world that signifies, or at least they feel like signifies a like, yeah, now that they said that out loud, something's gonna happen. And it's like, no, like if there's something specific you want to happen in the world, you gotta go make it happen in the world. Like Katt getting on there and uh, in many ways, calling out, stuff that like, I don't think is untrue in its full, right? Like, yeah, Steve Harvey has found a pathway to national acclaim or not like prominence within the media space that, you know, is not necessarily a bad thing, but may not have been the thing that he wanted. Now I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not a decision for me to make. Um the insinuation, and the thing I think, this weird thing we do about Hollywood and media, or the perception of Hollywood and media and power access, where some of us trade not like in a like reference point, something to come back to later. I mean, I would say, all right. So exemplified by what's currently at least happened or has been revealed with these lawsuits and things involving Diddy, that folks are like, see, we try to tell y'all the industry's dirty. Look, Diddy, oh, skeletons and chickens coming home to roofs and all those things, right? But Diddy, you ain't need to know about Diddy to know that, like, a lot of not just the entertainment business, because there's a lot of businesses in America that are dirty, nasty, filthy places. Once you find out what's really, if you up in certain, echelons and spaces, but that there is the idea that someone is masterminding all these behaviors, right? Which to me are more about the dynamics and realities of what happens when people have power and it's not stabilized by their culture and their values and their concepts of equality and their concepts of who they are, that requires them to operate with a higher level of ethics. Right. So they feel so that if they have the power to like ask for unethical things because they have that leverage in life, that they think that's okay. Right. And we have a society that at its root started with an economic model that depended on how much deprivation and violence you could visit upon the people to create economic production. Right. Until our society wrestles with that, it will always be the underlying subtext is, yeah, but also I could just beat the hell out of you and make you do it. Right. Which is not too much unlike the prior existing societies, but we'll save that for a later conversation. So saying that to say, like, the sub like Katt telling them how it is about trying to be in the entertainment business, right? And so then all of these people that he named are all controlled by this unseen hand, right? As opposed to all of y'all are in a wild, weird system, right? That is tied to what are the things you can do to make a living or make astronomical money in some cases, right? Doing your creative works. And then these are the pathways we have to do it. And then these are also, there's a relationship to you, the person who consumes the art. That, we don't hold the persons that consume the art for engaging with something that we might see as monstrous or at least in some ways dangerous. And so then it's like, oh, well, we need a hero that's going to like valiantly, come out here and tell it like it is about what's really going on behind closed doors. And it's like, I mean, I guess, but like that's not really the substrate that's going to like change the third grade reading levels in my community. Like that's not going to make sure that industrial policy offline kind of industrial policy supports the stability, like community stability, so that folks could plan their futures and have good homes and access to food and quality food. Like these, so we can paint this kind of on Katt as a hero, right? And
Right.
and I have my various feelings about I understand why folks will latch on to someone's what they've done in the public sphere and take esteem and motivation from that. I personally struggle with sort of assigning them a level of almost I don't know, like superhuman
Yeah, I mean,
weight, because it's like,
assigning them like he won't go back and you won't hear from him again. Like it's not like he said this and next he decided to leverage what's going on with banks, and
right,
next he decided to talk about the education system, and like he did this and he gossiped for 3 hours so that you come to the show
yeah,
because you like gossip.
yeah,
And to your point about the systems, we often look at the creators of the content. Now I use the C word, content,
yeah,
versus the other C word, you're consuming the content.
yeah,
If you have an interest in watching it, that gives an inclination that that's what the market is paying for.
right,
Like housewives of enter whatever area. Because there's somebody that wants to watch people be petty. Somebody wants to watch someone be mean. Someone wants to watch someone in a house that's not theirs. Someone wants to watch people in the houses that they want to be in.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's the set of people who want to see the thing, so that gets produced. But I think we can make the content producer king versus the consumer as determining largely what will be created. Because literally it won't continue to be created if there's no money in it, in a broader sense, right? Not talking about like individual sense or even like a small community sense, but in a broader context, people are not going to keep creating stuff that's not going to sell. Right, like it's not going to happen. So the Katt Williams creating a level of controversy to drive his sales, and then you confusing it for anything else than it driving his sales,
Yeah,
itself is problematic.
yeah, yeah. And the thing that like it's like you can mistake like getting into the factual nature or like whatever of what he's saying and lose the sight of like, oh, by him saying this, we're all watching it. And also he's funny and he's a charismatic dude and he's a smart dude. So he knows how to weave a yarn. Like, he knows how to get up there and captivate you to like want to keep, what's he about to say next? He's a seasoned, almost 40 years of comedy person, which is an art around talking. It's an art where you go on a stage with a microphone and just talk for like an hour, 2 hours sometimes, and people laugh. It's unlike any other, it's not like, it's a band, it's not a band there. It's just you and the stage. And anyone that can do that at the level he can do that can draw you in to what they're talking about, and you can lose sight of like, oh, wait a minute, man. Maybe some of this is not really none of my damn business at some point, right? Now, one other thing, I'll just as a footnote, and I don't totally remember what happened with it. That's like to his credit. During the pandemic, either he got stuck here or something happened. And my understanding is, he put a lot of money in the street in terms of like doing business with folks and donate. Like, I mean, like there's stuff he's talked about in there that to me is also him talking about like his character as a person. You know what I'm saying? When they're talking about him like raising like the foster kids and family kids he's adopted and all that thing. Like there are ethics that he has that I think are genuine, right? That he also sort of wanted to put out there. But it's like, like I say, our weird current society's thing around, if I just got on here and told you all the good stuff I do, you probably won't believe it. Or you think I'm lying, right? Like you think I'm telling you that I do good stuff because I want you to know I can do good stuff. So I gotta say some wild stuff along with the good stuff. Because otherwise you're gonna be like, oh, man, ain't nobody that good of a person. Tell us something you don't like. Tell us about a comedian you don't like, Katt. You know what I'm saying? Like we all have to bear witness to like a part of the purpose of the show. I mean, we are making a podcast. We are having a conversation with the intent that folks would listen to it and hopefully get something from it, right? Of value, right? We maybe help, but also it's a very real human thing that the way we like gossip is not a concept that only exists in the West. Like gossip is a very old human, like every society has some level of two people talking about the thing that happened, but it's also that's a lot of ways about how you can process some stuff. It's the two people talking about it, and like, you heard what they did over there in the other valley. Oh yeah, I saw a lot of. Yeah, they ate all they whatever nuts. Or, I'm speaking from the context of some antediluvian time way in the past where it might have been one group of people in this valley, another group of people in the other valley, and y'all was spreading the stories so what happened in the other valley. You know what I'm saying? But that might get you ready for the harvest or what the some new people showed up. We don't know about them people. How do we know about them? Well, we ask the other people what they know about them other people that we ain't never seen. Right? Like these are not these are things that humans do, but within the constructs that we have now, it's like it can be amplified and then it's monetized and then all kinds of other stuff. It's like I said, the YouTube count don't care if you watch the whole thing and was mad the whole time, because as far as it's concerned, if somebody watched it. So every ad that ran during that 3 hours, every time you had to click skip to the next, like all the data aggregated from the thing, all the activity from the clips, which again, you can't tell me that man didn't think ahead that the stuff I'm going to say that's going to be funny, that people are going to like layer it on all sorts of memes, like all of this stuff is happening at the same time, and you can get caught up in this like Katt's my hero, and like now I ain't gonna watch I ain't watching Family Feud no more because they was jealous of Bernie Mac, right? Like okay, I guess. Like what? I mean, if you like Family Feud, man, watch Family Feud.
And it presupposes that any of us have really thought deeply about the character of the people who are producing our content and our art.
Yeah.
Right, like it presupposes we care about that, and I'm not saying that like we don't, or we could, or we should, or we shouldn't. I mean, I generally would like to care about the character who produces the art, but then I also understand that my perception of the art is a very personal thing that then has its own relationship to me and not to you, right? Not to even to the producer to a certain degree, right? Like it may be a signal or a kind of like buoy or identification point in my own life, and you may or may not do some conscious or unconscious separation from goal of artist or super character of artist, right? Because history is replete of people that created stuff that the beauty of what they created was not parallel to the beauty of their personalities. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we kind of got to get past that, but right to that point of like, Cedric the Entertainer got that show about the neighborhood. There Goes Neighborhood, whatever it's called, on CBS, and I actually enjoy it in a goofy way. It's him and his kids and Trisha Arnold from Martin. Even though sure she's done other stuff, and I enjoy it. I'm not going to not watch it because Katt Williams say that he stole a joke in 1999.
Right? Like, he took my joke. Like, all right, yeah, I mean, at some point, y'all need to deal with that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like you should have said something to him, and y'all should have fought in the hallway of one of these big what's the names real quick, so we knew how both y'all carried it and call it a day, like them Zeno and the Locks fighting. Like you know what I'm saying? Like
y'all scrapped it out, and then I was over. Like y'all scrapped it out, now it's dead. Like we squashed it. You know what I'm saying? We got the fade on, and now it's squashed. You know what I'm
saying? Right, and so I could appreciate that a little more than this like lingering thing, which then makes people weirdly take sides of conversations that are not side-based conversations.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know Bernie Mac.
Right.
I liked Bernie Mac's comedy, but I didn't know Bernie Mac. So, you know what I mean? It sometimes we take very internal conversations and turn them into external conversations, which I think has its own challenge to it. I mean, I think it's enjoyable. Again, as camp, it's enjoyable as, like you said, gossip. We just didn't create like in Gossip in America, right? They didn't have all the tellers of society's past that would weave wild stories that may or may not have been true.
Yeah.
So we weren't the first ones. I think people figured out how to monetize it on a whole different level. And,
and just the other footnote I want to add to is too. It's like, for Shannon Sharp, for Club Shay Shay, is like, look, you have created a media product, and it's ready. I mean, he's talked to, I don't know. I mean, he's talked to a lot of Black athletes and entertainers. You know what I'm saying? Which, to the degree the way media works, there's a story that someone would be willing to have with Shannon Sharp that's different than if I don't even know what other media the Today Show wouldn't be the place, would be different than Joe Rogan, right? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If Joe Rogan invites Katt Williams on, it's not going to be. I mean, Katt probably wouldn't even play it that way. Because there's a cultural affinity there where it's like I would imagine Katt would be kind of like, nah, Joe. I mean, we're gonna talk about comedy and touring and crazy stories that happens when you go on tour and like people who were influential in me, getting started in comedy and like what I've learned about the entertainment business. I may not get into if I would think a Katt Williams wouldn't maybe get in on that platform and go bang on Steve Harvey for 20 minutes because he knows how, especially for our community, even if other communities don't care. We're gonna be like, hey, Katt, you can't go on that man's show and bang on bang on a bunch of Black folks. Come on, man. Like, better, right? And for whatever that means, as for our society, right?
And I think again, I just say we have to interrogate that sometime, like our assumption of what that means.
Right. like that. And so
that long-held Black idea of what you don't do with around into other Black people. And is that still in play?
Is it still play? And then again, what are the modern rules for that? And why?
Right.
Like, why does that matter? If it matters. If it doesn't matter.
Right. If it matters, or if it matters that you talked about them. Like if you talked about them because you were exposing a broader societal ill is one thing. If you talked about them because you were getting ready to go on tour and you wanted to create some controversy for the tour, which is closer to what I think this is, right? Like,
no, you needed to get some eyes on you, and I guess I haven't listened to the Willie D conversation, but my understanding is the Willie D interview that Willie D had not put out before there was he kind of does a very similar thing. Right now, Willie D has a totally different footprint than Shannon Sharp. And Willie D probably regrets not one of. I don't even know how, Shannon Sharp has a certain charisma and style, right? That and the way his thing goes, like I found the interview with him and Marshawn Lynch, who's one of my favorite people that I don't know personally, as far as athletes, was particularly entertaining. Like there's a certain thing that's happening with that show, and it's not like he's not trying to hide it. Like he's like, yo, I'm trying to highlight folks that are doing stuff in sports and entertainment the same way I'm doing stuff in sports and entertainment, and have a conversation that you can have here with me that you may not be able to have other places. And if it happens, and then I've left this relationship with Fox and Skip Bayless, and now I'm over here, in my day job or my other side job, or I'm over there, I'm over here, I got my own thing, and I am my own media product, right? Because we have an apparatus now where you can go find a piece of content that you enjoy, and not depend on if Philly 57 comes in clear by your house, or if the cable's on. Like if you got some internet, you can go watch these videos
and so I do want to touch on one thing just before we transition, and I think it's it's ironic. We'll pull a little bit of American fiction irony here. It's about this idea of the podcast and how you had podcasts where people are talking online or about something, because it's not always just an interview. You can have a podcast that's a deep dive and some research about something, or so. And you have this idea, people like, okay, this is a podcast. And then this idea of like everyone's creating podcasts and they all are like videos, right? And so people are like, oh yeah, my podcast. And it's like, well, it's kind of a TV show. It's kind of a media show. Does anyone really listen to this if they don't watch y'all? Like, if someone doesn't listen to something without watching y'all, it ain't, in my estimation, again, I can be curmudgeon here. But it feels like, is it really a podcast now? Because it's not really to be listened to. You're producing it mainly to be watched.
Yeah.
And I think it does. I think there's a bigger picture where it does the actual industry of podcasting a disservice. Because while this is happening and that gets 38 million views, the actual podcast industry is contracting as far as at least the streaming industry is defining it.
Yeah.
And what the streaming industry is paying for, right? And so it's just an interesting thing where it's at a place where people say, "Oh yeah, Club JJ Shannon Sharp's podcast," and it's like, this feels like a TV show that you could listen to versus something, and all of the things that we're calling podcasts now they're only one kind of experience. They're only people talking to each other in interviews, not any other form of how information is trafficked.
Yeah, definitely the video podcast is not doing the like documentary style experience of something, or like and it's a strange. I mean, I've talked about you like creatively trying to figure out, and there's people even told me, "Oh man, y'all should do some video so we can see." I'm like, but we, I mean, I guess, but I started this because I thought you just wanted to hear our voice. Like, I might take some pictures, like let's like get my core thing so you can see the person I'm talking to, but I wanted you to listen to us talk. I didn't, so I'm still wrestling with like the idea that like, oh, I need to like start making videos and people like see me talking, even if I'm just talking.
Yeah, I think it just turns it into something. And again, from a media perspective, I mean, I get it. And from a media perspective, what it means and what it represents is like, okay, I want to understand the new times, but I think it has almost butchered the variety of forms in which information can be distributed through an audio methodology. Now, obviously, when everybody was home, I think it shifted and changed the idea of what people would call like a podcast. But I think it's gotten to a point where, no one's really creating this content to be consumed via like a streaming network or some other form of network, right? Like it's being created with visuals, which is fine. But I think in that broader media dialogue, it can start to minimize the kind of ways in which information is disseminated. Because I think podcasting, in a sense, not replaces, but has served as a complement to the idea of terrestrial radio and the role that terrestrial radio played in conveying ideas to communities.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And we're both people who are people of those times of knowing and thinking about and being impacted by the influence of terrestrial radio.
Yeah. And it's something I think it's definitely something to ponder, right? Again, like if because all of these things to me represent a pathway by which you understand the world. And so if you are Club Shay Shay, you do the Joe Budden podcast, you do maybe some other like motivational, I don't know, like, go out and wrestle a bear, you know what I'm saying? Podcast or show, right? Because even listening, like there's stuff that I listen to that I can play and listen to the conversation while I'm like cleaning up or like making dinner or I'm like, doing a project because my mind can engage with the words while my body is doing these other tasks. But there's other stuff that I can't listen to if I'm like writing an email or I'm reviewing some documents because like I can't read the thing and listen to what you're talking about at the same time because your brain, that's not how brains work. And and then there's YouTube stuff I watch, like some dude like carving wood to make a weird cabin in the woods with only a sheet. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh man, let me see how this man gonna put this sheet together to make a cabin. Like, like, let me watch this. Right. Like random stuff that, and then that's a whole other conversation. But like when this fits into the model of like, well, how do we disseminate the ideas that we really that we think really need light? You know what I mean? How do we process and discuss the big issues that are impacting our life and our society? are these different newer media outlets, are they effective at some of those things that we do need to do that maybe we can't do in terrestrial media anymore, right? Or are all of these places becoming these places that we only pay attention to them when they give us something provocative, and they're not
Right.
this place where we go, man, I'm really trying to understand what folks is talking about with this UBI thing, or like what does it mean for the dams to come down on the Klamath River, and will dams, in other parts of the country that are no longer effective, like how does that mean for the ecosystems and traditional life ways of communities that of our indigenous communities that were displaced and destroyed to support our industrial production, right? Like, we gonna talk about that, or we gonna talk about the brother the brother from the Dallas Goldtooth banging on some other, indigenous community comedian about something, right? Like, what I mean? Like, instead of being like, oh no, like, let me like learn these other deeper stories. Like, so it's something for us, I think, as consumers, because that for most of us, most of us are more consumers of content than we are creators. And I think we need to be be mindful, have some level of awareness, like, yo, what am I consuming? Like, what am I telling the algorithms that I want out of life? And then, is that in confluence of who I think I am? You know what I mean? And I think, that could get interesting for a lot of us. So, yeah.
Well, let us continue to make it interesting, brother.
That's right. So, with that, you know what I'm saying? If you ain't seen it, you got 3 hours, or you got a lot of house cleaning to do, pop that thing on the TV on the flat screen and get the vacuuming, and because you're gonna have a whole afternoon. But yeah, man, as always, thank you for adding on, and that's all I got for the good of the order.
My man, peace.
Peace. Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, Majestic. Good Brothers is a part of the Ash Your Old Head podcast, and you can always support the podcast by, number one, listening, sharing where you listen, rating and subscribing where you're listening, and generally get the word out. You can also search up Justice Raji on Patreon and become a patron. There'll be some changes coming to that at some point when we get there, but appreciate any support to make it possible for me to keep creating these. Hopefully you got something of value. There will be more to come, and I'm just going to cut us short. So, enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.